Thank you for checking out another episode of the Rogue Patriot podcast, where we are taking back the word patriot. Today, we have a big fake news alert for you. The fakening has come upon us. Selena, fill us in more.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about the bill that was passed in California, the SB 145 bill discussing basically lowering, I guess, the age, well, not even lowering the age limit, but making it to where you can't discriminate against LGBT adults who have sexual relations with minors.
Yeah, so that's how this bill is being sold. And this is another one that, this is another one of these like red herring kind of things where the people who are always the ones screaming about fake news are the people that are pushing this story. Mm-hmm. And in reality, this is really a non-story.
Exactly. Exactly.
This law is so insignificant in the scope of like child sex offense laws and all that kind of stuff. It's ridiculous. So you ready to talk about it?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So basically the way it works in the states, and each state does this a little bit differently, but the point is all generally the same. So there is an age of sexual consent for minors that is below the age of majority. So typically in the U.S., states set their own laws for when somebody can consent to have sexual relations, regardless what kind of sexual relations, just sexual contact. And typically that age is around 16. So if somebody, for example, if two 16-year-olds have sex, they won't both be charged with child molestation or sexual assault because the law considers them old enough to be able to make that decision, even though they're not technically adults yet. So the problem is when people engage in sex acts that are only like a year or two away from each other in age. So if two 16-year-olds can have sex legally because they're at the age of consent, then what about somebody who's 17 and somebody who's 16? Or somebody who is a day away from being 17 and somebody who's 16, or 18 and 17, however you want to do that. There's a big potential for injustice there because is somebody who is 16 years old in 364 days fundamentally different than somebody who's exactly 17 years old? No, it's just arbitrary, right? Mm-hmm. Like before you're the age you were, the day before, did you feel different than on your birthday? No. So this is one thing this law aims to help fix is a carve out in which vaginal intercourse is treated differently from oral or anal sexual contact.
Yeah, which is the main point. It's not even really to change what judges can or cannot decide or change the age limit even really. It's only for discrimination of basically oral sex.
Yeah, so actually we should have said this right off the top. Number one, this bill does not change the age of sexual consent in California. Exactly. For anybody, whether you're gay, straight, whatever.
So the law is already to where the judge can decide. They can make that decision to where you have to list as a sexual offender or not.
Right. They can do that when there is vaginal sexual contact in question.
Exactly.
They already have that ability.
But not with oral.
Or anal.
Correct. Exactly. Which is how that relates back to the LGBT community.
Because two LGBT people can't, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. Two gay or lesbian people can't have penis-vaginal intercourse.
Exactly.
So they are thereby treated differently. Their sexual acts are treated differently under the law just by virtue of them not having the right parts to fit into this exemption. So
exactly.
The only thing that this law changes, well, let me lay this out really clearly. If there is vaginal sex in California between somebody who's like 16 years old and somebody who's 17 years old, the judge can decide whether or not the defendant has to register as a sex offender and for how long. That is the way it's been. That is not new. What the California SB 145 does is provide the same ability for what the law considers sodomy, which is oral or anal.
Which currently
contact.
Sodomy is, I think, that they have to register.
Correct.
As a sex offender.
Correct.
That's the only thing changing. So if you're fine with the law the way it was, because nothing is changing, then you should be fine with this law, because it's the exact same law that California's had. It's just making that law for vaginally. It's the same one they had for vaginal penetration.
Right.
It's just not the same for oral or anal. So
right.
With having said that, all they're doing is making them the same, no matter how the intercourse is completed.
Yes.
Yeah. That's all that's changing with this bill.
Correct. And this is like an old Victorian ideal that our legal system has had to figure out, especially over the past like 40 or 50 years, is that when you go back to like early 1900s, society felt that acts of sodomy, so blowjobs and salad tossing, are fundamentally more perverted or more heinous than vaginal intercourse. And that idea in society permeated into the law. So the law treated those things very differently. And in some states, sodomy was illegal for a long time. And on some states, I think it's still on the books. And I think in the South, it still is in a few places. Obviously, nobody's going to jail for two consensual adults having or performing acts of sodomy on each other. Otherwise, there would be a lot more people in jail and a lot fewer people at nightclubs. But that idea is very dated in 2020, and it was dated in 2000 and 2010 and 1990. I think at this point, our society in general does not feel, note that I said in general, not talking about everybody, but in general, does not feel that blowjobs are any worse than just having vaginal sex with somebody, or that it makes you, more of the devil or something to give a blowjob than vaginal intercourse. Society as a whole, I don't think feels that way. Not saying that there are people who don't.
Oh, there definitely are
definitely people who feel that way.
Yeah.
But as a whole, I don't think that's where we are anymore. And it's just ridiculous to treat something in the law so differently when the acts are so very similar. And
it is to discriminate. I'm sorry. There's no...
Right. Now, whether it's to discriminate against people who are LGBT or just people who like doing that, it's discriminating against somebody no matter what. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of people will not be comfortable with what I'm about to say, but would you rather your little girl give some guy in her class a blowjob, or would you rather her have vaginal sex and risk getting pregnant? Because right now the law is saying that blowjob is way worse. That blowjob is so much worse that somebody would have to register as a sex offender for the rest of their life.
But they don't have to. It's up to the judge if they have to, if it's vaginal penetration on your daughter and she gets pregnant.
Exactly.
So the judge already has that right to make that decision. It's nothing new. It's nothing to flip out about.
No.
It's only changing it for sodomy.
Yeah.
So,
no, pedophilia is not now legal in California, as a bunch of these zeros are complaining about.
Yeah. And I love how the headers are... This all happened at the perfect time, too, with everyone talking about pedophilia and how sex trafficking has got, and they act like it's gotten bigger. It really hasn't. Honestly, it's funny that this especially came out big around the time when people are trying to distract you from the pandemic and stuff, for one. So that's not saying that pedophilia doesn't exist. That's not saying it shouldn't be seen to and that people shouldn't be standing up fighting against it. But it is funny that this is a distraction from something, yet again, that is going on. And then they're coming up with these headers that make it seem like it's a bigger deal than what it is. So these headers include the word pedophilia and like it's legalized. But the other thing that they're putting in there is LGBT.
Yep.
And they're putting the pictures of, rainbow flag and everything, gay pride. So it's really getting the right side all heated.
It is. It's playing to that base.
And I do not know. And if anyone knows where this came from, please email and tell me, because where or who, I don't know. Where did it come from that the LGBT community is for pedophilia?
Yeah, that is a
Now I want facts. Don't sit here and be like, oh, I saw this Facebook meme. I want facts of this person that made a speech, at LGBT congregation, whatever.
Yeah.
Of,
And don't say
we should sleep with 7-year-olds.
Exactly.
And then everybody in the crowd was like, yeah, like, show me a video clip. Give me an article. Give me something that has some evidence. Because I can tell you right now, I know plenty of gay people and, bisexual. I know plenty, and none of them have agreed with that. They've been completely, hell no, I don't agree with that. And no one in that community does that I'm a part of. Like,
no, the only people that agree with that are pedophiles.
Yeah.
And by the way, with you asking for sources on where that's coming from, don't send in an article from christiandaily.com or from, one of these nonsense websites that are out there that just generate this kind of stuff.
Their personal opinions and stuff.
Our email is the Rogue Patriot podcast @gmail.com. And if you have an answer to that question, please send it in.
With evidence.
Yeah, no.
With
that's the point.
Evidence.
Yes, exactly.
Facts.
Evidence. Not some nonsense from your favorite blog site that somebody's
or your
generating.
favorite Facebook meme page. Like, it's really annoying to see how many memes, like, because the way I actually read about this one was a Facebook meme. And it was titled, actually, California reduces the penalty for child rape.
Yeah.
And legalizes pedophilia. So that's actually how I started looking into this, because I was like, what? No, they didn't. Look it up, do a little research. Of course, it's nothing with child rape, and it's not pedophilia. So having said that, and I know I'm going to get a lot of, thoughts probably from the right side, oh, you support the gays and stuff like that. And I must be for pedophilia too, for what I'm fixing to say. But first, let me say something about myself. And I might have some gays hate me after this. I know plenty, like I've said, of gay people, bisexual people. But it doesn't mean I agree with it. Would I be gay? No, it's not my sexual preference. Do I guess you can use the word support it? No, not really. But I think it's their personal sexual orientation, and as a Christian, I think that's between them and God. That's not my place to make that decision for them. I personally don't think it's very Christian, but I think that's between them and God, and I don't hate any of them. So I'm fine if people want to be gay, I guess, but I don't necessarily support it, I guess is the way to say that. Just because, I don't support people smoking weed, but I don't care if it's legalized.
Right, because should the state be responsible for enforcing moral boundaries?
Should the government be involved in your personal life?
Exactly.
Your sexual orientation and all that? No, they shouldn't.
Yeah.
And if you're a true American, you would agree with us, because the government should not be making decisions for your personal household and your sexual orientation,
right,
or anything else that has to do with that. It shouldn't. That's not how. It's not what America was built on. That's not the ideology of it. But anyway,
it fires up the political base, and it gets certain people easy votes to target that issue.
Exactly. So anyway, having said that on how I believe on that, what else I believe, again, might mark me as someone who supports pedophilia, but the way that people, when I think pedophilia, I'm thinking 11-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 3-year-olds.
Prepubescent.
Yes. And I'm not thinking your 15-year-old daughter or your 15-year-old son slept with a 19-year-old. Honestly, would I want my kid doing it? No. But would I want that person marked as a sex offender for the rest of their life or in jail from it? No. If it's rape, obviously, yes. But if my child at 15, 16 years old is sleeping with a 19 or a 20-year-old, I do not want that punishment on that person for the rest of their life. Because I think if you're 15 or 16 years old, then you're perfectly capable of making those decisions. And these people that are blowing up and acting like, oh, well, if you're 14, 15, 16, then that 19, 20-year-old should go to jail for this and be marked as a sex offender for the rest of their lives. Why? Because a few months ago, when they weren't dating the 19 or 20-year-old, you were perfectly fine with your 16, 15, 16-year-old on birth control sleeping with the 17-year-old that just went to the same high school.
Yep.
You were fine with the sexual act. It's just the age made a difference. So you're saying that they're old enough to consent to sex, but not if the person that they're having the consent with, or giving the consent to, rather, if their age is a certain thing.
Yeah,
you know, like if they're at a certain age,
or
exactly.
by a minute. If they are a minute into being 18 years old,
exactly,
should the law be fundamentally different? No.
Yeah.
And I think the only people that would argue that it should be are the people whose daughters need to be looked after,
which are going to make the decision to have sex anyway.
All the time. Right?
They're
exactly.
going to.
Yes. No.
I'm a female. I was in high school at one time. You know, I lost my virginity while I was in high school. And let me tell you something. The guy was 2 years older than me. Now, was he robbing the cradle when we first got together? No. But, you know, we dated 2 years. He was above 18.
Yeah.
And I was not. So technically, he should have been sent to jail. But I was fully consenting, people. He was my boyfriend. He had been my boyfriend for years. But by law, my parents could have went and had him sent to jail and marked as a sex offender. And let me tell you something. At that age, 15, 16, I knew very well what I was doing. Yep. I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
So,
and so that falls under the statutory rape laws when it's heterosexual people. Now, what does that word mean? A lot of people have heard that term, statutory rape, and some people know that means somebody typically over 17 having sex with somebody under 17. Regardless of consent, it is considered statutory rape. Now, when you break that word down, statutory means of statute, which means legally rape. Now, with adults, it's not called statutory rape because the circumstances of the situation determine whether the sexual act was rape or not. But what that term means for minors is that regardless of consent, regardless of the situation or the context, it's rape by default because of the people's age.
Exactly.
Now, one thing that's important to note, because I don't want to be left open to this criticism, is we are not saying that somebody who's 60 should be able to have sex with somebody who's 15. And that is not the law. The law in California does not permit that either. Mm-mm. And this change, this SB 145, is completely irrelevant to that. It has nothing to do with a wide age difference. The only thing it handles is allowing a judge to determine whether or not somebody should be a sex offender, the same way they can for vaginal sex.
And I'm not even saying that at 15, 16 years old, you should be having sex.
No,
whether it's with another 15, 16-year-old. I mean, yeah, has the majority of people done that? Yes. Don't sit here and get on your high horse. You know that you did stuff, whether it was, you know, vaginal penetration or whether you were doing oral. You did something in high school, most likely. I'm not saying everybody, but the larger percent definitely has. So, but that doesn't mean that it's right, like morally, or are you old enough to make those decisions? Like technically, no, probably not. But
right, the law
at the same time, I mean, back in the old days, it was okay for you to get married at 14, 15 years old.
Yeah, or younger.
So, and I know that's changed. I know some other countries still do that, but I'm saying, like, even if you look at biblical times, they did that.
Yep.
In biblical times. So, you know.
No, this is about two things, I think. Anyway, this is about, number one, political hucksters who are looking to capture a base and get votes, get
light
easy
a fire
votes by firing, by firing people up. And number two, it's about dads who have weird pseudo-sexual relationships with their daughters where they are intimately emotionally connected to their daughter's purity or their idea of purity.
Yeah.
Which I think is
it's
so
the moms
ridiculous.
Too. It's the moms too.
I'm sure.
Years ago, this was a story that I heard. Someone that I knew someone who was like, I think, 23 or something. And the person that he was with was 17. And she'd been dating him for a while. They had been, sexually active for a while. Everything was fine with her. Her parent was fine with it that she lived with. he broke up with her, what's the first thing her and her parent go and do? They go to the law because she was technically under 18 and he was, I can't remember if he was 22 or 23. Needless to say, he went to jail.
Yeah.
And he's marked as a sexual offender. Why? Because of his age. But yet the girl was 17. She wasn't that far away from 18. But yet by law, he could get sent to jail for it. She consented for months and it was fine.
Consent is irrelevant in statutory rape.
Exactly.
It is rape by default.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, parents can switch on what they think is okay. And the law shouldn't protect that. So, yeah, I'm not saying people under the age of 18 should be having sex, but obviously they do. Parents are fine. A lot of parents I know seem to be fine with it if they're putting their daughters on birth control and stuff. So you're obviously preparing for them to have sex in high school. You're readying yourself for them to be sexually active. But if someone's over 18 by a day, you may not like the idea of the act. And that, to me, that's wrong.
It's absolutely wrong, and I don't think there's a legitimate argument saying that that is the right way to carry out justice.
Yeah.
I mean, I just can't see it. I think another aspect to issues like this are lazy parents who want the law and the school system to
parent for them,
exactly,
to do their parenting job, which that is in so many areas that parents do that. Not all parents. But a lot of parents think the law and school system is supposed to raise their child.
Yeah. And the law, I'm going to say this a million times, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but they're wrong, and I can prove that they're wrong. Mm-hmm. The law cannot enforce morality in society. It cannot work. It will never work.
Well,
you cannot jam that down people's throats at the end of a gun.
The Bible cannot force morality.
Yeah, nobody can. It's not how it works.
That's part of its point, is to give people guidance for good, but it cannot force it. It is by free will.
Nothing can. And this idea, well, actually, before I say that, there are a lot of people who will disagree with that. There's a lot of people who are somehow in favor of both small government and of laws like this that get inside consenting people's pants.
Yeah.
Their response to that will be something like, well, I mean, what about child molestation? What about groping? What about sexual assault?
Doesn't matter.
Like that?
It's
There's
still
a
gonna
victim.
happen.
That is not legislating morality, because there is somebody who is having an act of violence committed against them, or an act of assault committed against them. That is not legislating morality. There's a distinct difference than that, compared to, oh, well, you know what? We need to make a law where all women have to wear ankle-length dresses because that is the moral way to be. You can't do that shit. It doesn't work in any country ever. And let me tell you something, to all of you people that feel like it is the law's job to do that and the judges and police's job to do that.
Go ahead and join a communist country.
Yes, or a kingdom like Saudi Arabia, or like Iran, or like the United Arab Emirates, or Qatar.
But get out of America because you're not standing for American rights.
Absolutely not. That is fundamentally anti-American. And what bothers me, this shit gets me fired up, because these people wrap themselves in they wrap themselves in the flag and in the term patriot. A lot of them feel this way, that they can inject their religious morality into the legal system. And you cannot do that shit. And the Constitution specifically does not touch issues of morality. None of the founding documents do, because you cannot separate that from religious ideas, and it's not the government's job to enforce religious ideas.
Well, political and religious stuff should never
mix, never works out well.
Yeah, and the thing is a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's separate from, church and state. That's like
that was a founding principle that the country was started on.
And I love how people with religious views or religious background like I have, it's very keep prayer in school, stuff like that, keep God in the pledge. I'm fine with that. I mean, that is more my view, that's more my beliefs. But you can't sit here and say, oh, let's force this religion into the government, into our political values, I guess, and then turn around and say, but churches shouldn't have to pay taxes because government shouldn't be involved with church. Oh, but church can be involved with government.
Right.
And that is not right. That's
no. It's
I mean,
not.
personally, I think churches should be taxed. Because their money's not going for the community. I've never seen one church that I've been to that has put their money towards the community, and so it has went to the preacher's BMW or something. I don't know. Like,
Yep.
and you see these 2-3 story churches where I live now compared to where I used to live. Big churches, disco balls, AV setups, all this stuff. They've got money. I mean, I've actually almost applied to a job that was making $65,000 a year just to be a church AV.
I know somebody who has
technician.
that job. They have millions of dollars of AV equipment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not including everything else that the church is buying.
Yep.
It's great that they have that, but if you have that much, you could certainly be taxed. You're not putting it towards your religious views. You're not helping people find God or doing any healing throughout the community. You're not doing
Right.
that. So just
No,
go
what
ahead
they-
and sit down. So I mean, but my point is that don't sit here and say that government shouldn't be involved with the church, but the church should be involved with government or political views or whatever. Keep those things separate because it's very easy to cross a line that shouldn't be crossed, and pretty much damage the original American concept.
Absolutely, which is what we talk about on this show. Talk about protecting and implementing into all kinds of different areas and where it actually is. That is not a fundamental religious idea, but it is not a fundamentally American idea to have religious values in law like that. Mm-hmm. But, that's something that I think a lot of preachers and pastors around the country are not telling their congregations. They are saying it absolutely is. It is your job to make your government align with what we are saying our values are.
Yeah.
And that's not true when it comes to victimless crimes.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here. And the problem is, I've already said it once, I'm gonna say it again, you cannot be both a small government person and we need to legislate morality person. Mm-hmm. You can't do it. You cannot do it. And if you think that you can, then that means that all of the Islamic people in the country have a right to force their Sharia law on you.
Exactly.
Because it's the same thing that you are doing.
Yeah, but then people will go, well, America was built off of Christian values, Christian morals. So therefore, all of Christianity, believing in God, the one true God, is allowed to be pushed into all this, but everyone else's religion is insignificant. And honestly, you're as bad as other countries who are forcing religion and ideas and morals and stuff that we fight against.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a form, I mean, maybe not of dictatorship, but it is a form of, you have this top person or this top group forcing one single idea
on everybody.
Everybody.
Yep. Even when it is obviously unjust to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, when it comes down to it, this is something that people felt they could blow up, that these pundit liars felt they could blow up. And right now, because of the 2020 election, there's a big push to frame the quote unquote radical left.
Yeah.
And scare everybody into thinking that, California is like the most Democrat state out there. And now they're going to let you have sex with children.
And
my Lord.
Not just have sex with children, but protect the LGBT community.
Exactly.
And allow them to do that to a child.
Right.
It's these articles are very LGBT is for pedophilia and for child rape. And they're the ones doing this. This is what California is doing. So it's not just just Democrats. It's also, or the left or whatever you want to call it. It's not just that. It's also against LGBT.
Right, exactly. Which, by the way, it is as offensive to compare LGBT people to pedophiles as it is to say that black people are intellectually inferior than white people.
Yeah.
That is the same thing that's happening there. Pedophiles are criminals. They are distinctly different from people
And
who engage in
they are
consensual
not all gay. I'm not
relationships.
saying that there aren't gay, pedophiles. Like,
Right.
I'm
no,
not
and
saying
there's
that,
probably white and
but
black pedophiles too.
they're
But that's
definitely
irrelevant.
straight. There's a lot of. I wish I would have actually looked up statistics on pedophiles and stuff. And
Yeah.
see what their sexual
percentage
orientation is. Exactly. Yeah. But no, don't act like it's just people who are gay that are pedophiles or something like. And don't sit here and say that the gay community, the LGBT is for raping children and stuff. That's a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, it totally is. And nobody should be taken seriously who says stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous. And it's part of the reason that, we were talking about how the politicians in California making this an LGBT issue were doing a disservice to them because they were just fueling hate on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And it does help LGBT people, but it applies to everybody. It doesn't say you have to be gay or queer or lesbian in the law for it to apply to you. They can't put that in a law. It applies to everybody who wants to have oral and anal sex. And I don't know about anybody else. I'll be honest. We're both millennials. There was a whole lot of oral sex going on in my high school.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot of it.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is not just purely a lesbian or gay issue, but the same thing, the people on the right who are waving this around as the pedophiles are now going to be legally protected and gay people can have sex with your kids and all this kind of stuff. They're fueling the hate on the left. Both of these parties are flying their opposition's flag and pointing to it and saying, hey, everybody, look at this. This is what they want to do. This is what they want to do. Hate them, hate them, hate them, hate them. And what's it turn into? It turns into Facebook memes, shares, fake news, and a bunch of bullshit.
It turns into a bunch of uneducated people as well, commenting on a subject that they have done no research into. They just read a header or a meme or something. And then you have these idiots out there voting.
Yep,
and if you ask them for evidence, all they do is just divert from the question or ask your question with another. They never give any evidence towards anything. They just have their idea and their meme that they read, and they unfortunately go and vote.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hugely unfortunate that they go and vote based on that information.
Yeah, and no research done at all, and hating the opposite side, whether it's a Republican hating a Democrat or a Democrat hating a Republican. It's just hate thrown at both sides, no research done. And personally, I think that's how the country's in the mess it's in now. And yes, I say it's in a mess.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're in a mess.
Yeah.
And one thing that's interesting, the face of the extremist wings of both parties have their own like news sites, basically. And excuse me. So, there are a few news sites that represent basically the far right and the far left. Mm-hmm. What's interesting is that this article, if you Google the meme that we originally saw on this, specifically said child rape in the title, that like California is protecting child rape. We talked about it earlier.
California is reducing the penalty for child rape and legalizing pedophilia.
Okay, so if you Google that, the first publication that comes up is a website called OP India, and it is an Indian news publication, Indian like the country India, not Native American. And what's interesting there is they have a lot, like a lot of countries in that part of the world, they do not have a very progressive view of marriage. So the issue of gay people or LGBT people being able to marry is a big one over there because I think it's still illegal in that country. And so you see a lot of this stuff coming from Africa too. There are these incredibly hateful articles that usually come from politicians in those countries that are blasting it like what we just said, comparing all LGBT people to pedophiles and stuff like that. So I thought it was interesting that, I mean, I'm not using a VPN or anything. This is just our normal internet connection. And I Google that, and the first result that comes up is an Indian paper or an Indian news website. And the title of the article is California Legislature Passes Bill Lowering Criminal Penalty for LGBT Adults Who Have Had Sexual Relations with Minors. Which, again, is not the case. They did not change the criminal penalty at all. They are leaving it up to the judge's discretion only whether the person makes it onto the sexual offender registry or not. The penalty in terms of like the sentence, in terms of years of jail, probation, community service, whatever, is exactly the same. That was not changed in this bill.
Yeah, and it's already set up like that for vaginal penetration. It's only changing it
right
for oral and anal. So therefore, if you were fine with that law, you should be fine with them just being like, oh yeah, and that's also including oral and anal now.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. That's all that's changed. That's all that has changed.
Yes, which that is the only honest view of this. Any other view is dishonest. I'm tired of this equality of opinions where if you just have the mental capacity to open your dumb mouth and have something fall out of it, your opinion is all of a sudden justified because it came from you. No,
or
it's not.
An opinion that is evidence.
Yeah,
that
it's
is
educated.
Fact, rather,
yes.
Not evidence, but fact.
Right.
That
no,
it's an educated comment because it came from your flippin' mouth.
Exactly. No, that is wrong. There is no justification for disliking this bill. Period. There is no honest justification. Let me put that.
And
caveat.
If you just don't like it, fine. But then you need to go back years of the bill that has been in place that you were perfectly fine with.
For vaginal.
Exactly. For vaginal. And you need to undo that one as well.
Exactly.
Find out when that law didn't exist, and let's go way back. I don't know when that was. I haven't even looked into before that bill was. It could be in the 40s or 50s for all I know. And if we're gonna go back to the way things were then,
oh shit,
lots of shit's fixing to change, people. Like a lot, and not any of you are gonna like it.
No, absolutely not. I think I saw briefly that law has been that way for vaginal intercourse for at least 10 years, and I think it was 20. Where it's been that way for that law.
But everybody's been fine with it for 10, 20 years.
That's like almost as long as the sex offender registry has been around.
Yep.
So that I think that probably happened at the same time. And they either very quickly changed it to where people with vaginal intercourse, the judge could decide whether or not they went on the registry. And they just never did it for sodomy.
Yeah.
It's not excusable. And if we want to parade ourselves around as being the freest country, shit like this needs to change. Mm-hmm. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been an episode of The Fakening, the fake news alert. And you know, a lot of these are going to be prompted by Facebook memes or Instagram memes because there's just so much bullshit and disinformation out there.
And so it's not just a meme though. It's so many people taking that like it's the word of God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like they take these memes and then they share them or they comment on somebody who's actually posting something that has facts and evidence and everything. And then they're turning around and using this meme as a history book or something. And it's like, no, you don't know what you're talking about.
Not at all. And actually, one last thing, I forgot to bring this up. The reason I brought up the origin of at least the story that I could find, or the title from OP India, mm-hmm. is because this is proof. Now, I'm going to tell you, a lot of people are going to put me in a box for saying this, but I'm going to preface by saying that I'm not one of these people who thinks that Donald Trump is a like Russian sleeper cell and that Russia got him elected and all this kind of stuff. I'm not one of those people, but I think you're an idiot if you believe that foreign entities are not seeding misinformation into the American view.
It's very easy, so I don't see why they wouldn't.
Right. There's Facebook shuts down troll farms every single day that are just manufacturing fake news. And you
people that do not do your research help spread it faster.
Exactly.
So the ones that don't get caught are spread faster. And I love seeing people that post memes that are not based on facts or evidence. They share no articles, nothing. Also posting about how Facebook is working with foreign governments to get fake news out there.
Yeah, exactly.
I love to see those people that are posting the fake news also talking bad about the opposite political side, and Facebook is the one causing all this fake news. And it's like you're kind of having a hand in that too.
Yeah, absolutely they are. And this is such a great example because we took a headline, or we took, the wording from a Facebook meme, put it in Google. First result is a media publication from a foreign country.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you think that isn't happening in a bunch of other areas, then I'm sorry you ain't paying attention, because it sure is. And the next time you see some meme that seems too outrageous to believe, for the love of God, please Google it.
Well,
regardless
next time
whether
you see
share it, Google it.
No, next time you see a meme, don't just take it as evidence or fact or anything.
Right.
Take it as a meme.
Yes. Absolutely. So, hey, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Always check out the podcast on whatever podcast app you are listening to us on. Like, subscribe, comment, please. All the episodes are posted on YouTube, along with some of them are filmed. Our discussions are not, though, like this one. So please check that out. It is the Rogue Patriot on YouTube, and our email address is the roguepatriotpodcast@gmail.com. Please send us in anything that you'd like for us to talk about, questions, comments, concerns, flames, rants, whatever you want to do. And stay tuned. We've got a lot more content coming for you. Thanks.